Hello, Rank Squad. When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Aloe or Allbirds or Aviator Nation, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand and brilliant marketing, but an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the businesses, making selling, and for shoppers, buying, simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify, who are home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And the not-so-secret secret with Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning that there are way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going... So, if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling, on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. It's no secret, businesses that want to grow with Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/ranks, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/ranks to upgrade your selling today. That's shopify.com/ranks.
It's time to turn your daydream into your dream job. Wix gives you the power to turn your passion into a moneymaker with a website that fits your unique vision and drives you towards your goals. Let your ideas flow with AI tools that guide you, but give you full control and flexibility. Manage your business from one dashboard and keep it growing with built-in marketing features. Get everything you need to turn your part-time passion into a full-time business. Go to Wix.com.
There are some things in life that just shouldn't be forgotten, like bringing your keys when you leave the house, setting your fantasy lineup, and most importantly, having Hidden Valley Ranch to watch the game. Especially if you're having pizza. Those creamy, zesty, Cool Ranch flavors take each cheesy, melty bite to an unforgettable level. Hidden Valley Ranch. Only serious about flavor.
Calling all sightseers and selfie takers. Welcome to Texas, where a day on our hiking trails will lead to a lifetime of memories. And family road trips become family legends. Where thrill seekers make a splash into spring-fed pools. And picky eaters will clean their plates. This is your invitation to visit Texas and see it for yourself. Visit TravelTexas.com and plan your family's trip today. Let's Texas.
Did you know 39% of teen drivers admit to texting while driving? Even scarier, those who text are more likely to speed and run red lights. Shockingly, 94% know it's dangerous but do it anyway. As a parent, you can't always be in the car, but you can stay connected to their safety with Greenlight Infinity's driving reports. Monitor their driving habits, see if they're using their phone, speeding, and more. These reports provide real data for meaningful conversations about safety. Plus, with weekly updates, you can track their progress over time. Help keep your teens safe. Sign up for Greenlight Infinity at greenlight.com/podcast.
Dougie.
Sam.
Following Newcastle United's tremendous Carabao Cup victory last Sunday, let's pose an interesting question. Does that help the club's prospects of keeping star striker Alexander Isak this summer?
Newcastle are loving life with Alexander Isak. They hope to be in Champions League next season, but in any case, they want to keep Alexander Isak at the club. But I keep telling you, Arsenal will be there. Arsenal want Isak. Liverpool are also there. Already made some contact. For Arsenal, is the absolute top target. For Liverpool, is one of the names they are considering.
Murphy is back, stick it!
But we're talking about Isak. Newcastle's on the table, Liverpool is on the table. And that's what I'm saying. Those three options are on the table.
Liverpool more attractive than Arsenal?
Yeah, hello everybody and welcome to the latest episode of The Truth, nestled snugly into this March international break, which feels like it's caught just about everybody off guard. I am your host, Sam Tighe, caught firmly off guard. Joining me is the superb Dougie Critchley. Do you feel prepared for this, Dougie, or did it also sneak up on you despite the fact that it's been in the calendar for 4 months?
No, I was relatively prepared for it. It was kind of at the end of a fairly busy period of travel for me. I was actually in Newcastle this weekend on a stag do.
Oh.
Then got down just in time to get on my sofa, put my Sunderland shirt on and watch Newcastle dominate Liverpool. It was highly, highly impressive. And actually, to be fair, there was the odd person in Newcastle that recognised me and they were very nice about the fact that I was a Sunderland fan. There was also, I quite enjoyed sort of having a little sort of drink with someone. They would be sort of enjoying it. And then as I was thinking about moving away, I'd just say, I'm a Sunderland fan and watch their face just completely drop. So it felt like I had a lot of power for the weekend, but not as much power as Alexander Isak and his Newcastle side. I thought they were absolutely magnificent, to be fair.
They were indeed. Commiserations on the final result there, Dougie. Unfortunate. Jack, you're here too. You're an international fiend, aren't you? I bet you're delighted to see Gavin Bazunu back in the Republic of Ireland setup. It's not been the same without him.
Yeah, we've dearly missed him, actually. That's the reason Ireland haven't been winning games. I got a text about 4 p.m. on Saturday from a friend of mine just being like, I'm with Dougie. And I was like, that's random. And I wasn't expecting that. I was like, where? He was like, Newcastle races. I was like, right, okay, cool. That's good. I hope you're both having a great day. So that was pretty much the highlight of my weekend.
To get more winners than I did. I had one winner in one race, but the rest was just a lot of narrow defeats. I hadn't quite cracked betting, but I did enjoy it and didn't go too crazy and didn't bet too mental. But yeah, it was nice to see Tom.
Actually, last time I saw you both, I was talking to you about how bad day one of Cheltenham had been. And we did that live on the podcast, I remember. Pleased to say that Wednesday and Thursday rescued Cheltenham to a very, very high degree for me. So I actually came out.
The record continues.
Okay in the end.
He's never lost money on the races at Cheltenham, ladies and gents. He's never lost money on Cheltenham. The record continues. Right, let's talk about some football. I was quite keen to stress the word Cheltenham there. Right, let's talk Alex Isak and start off with an apology to Newcastle fans. You're probably still on cloud nine. It may have been 5 days since you won your first trophy for 50 or 70 years, depending on your categorization of the Intercity Fairs Cup. So you're probably still enjoying that, and we're going to sit here and talk about how your star striker, your best player, may not be with you for much longer. We promise to do it with respect and care. Even though Dougie is a Sunderland fan, I will threaten him and make sure that he treats this with the professional level that he always brings to the podcast. But look, Isak is going to be one of the most fascinating storylines this summer. And the conversation around his future is going to start about now. Not that it's ever really not taken off, because for the last 18 months, maybe, I feel like we've been dealing with talk about Isak going here, going there, leaving Newcastle, maybe not. The beauty of this one over the course of this summer is going to be that his destination and his future feels genuinely wide open. In the past, we've had some sagas like Gareth Bale, who was destined to leave and destined to go to Real Madrid, or Jack Grealish, who was clearly going to go and he was always going to be Manchester City. But I think it's a very open market for Alexander Isak, and that includes staying at Newcastle, who he's just helped win the Carabao Cup for by scoring in the final. Jack, I actually want to bring you in first. You're a man who is overly emotional and prone to bursting into tears at certain things in this sport. I've stood next to you while you've done it. Did you spill a tear of joy for the Toon on Sunday? About time, wasn't it?
I did cry on Sunday, but it actually wasn't to do with Newcastle. Although Dan Burns' header did make me exceptionally happy, because Dan Burn, we spoke about this in a couple of things, but Dan Burn, I remember being released by Fulham in the Championship in a very poor Fulham team. He was the weak link. And he left for Wigan in League One. And actually, his last game was against Wigan. And he did a really random thing where, for the first time in his Fulham career, he got the ball, drove through midfield and spanked one off the post from 30 yards. And I was like, hang on, where's that been for the last sort of 2 years you've been here? But when Dan Burn left, and I was asked this on Fulhamish at the weekend, they was like, was that a mistake? I was like, no. Dan Burn wasn't good at that point. He didn't. And credit to him, because from that point, he has worked incredibly hard through his time at Wigan, through his time at Brighton, all the way back to Newcastle. To see him work his way back up to the top, the local boy scoring, the local hero scoring in the final, was really, really emotional. But no, it was actually Ryan Sessegnon scoring against Spurs that sent me so much tears.
Yeah. What a goal that was.
Yeah, beautiful moment there. Yeah, there's a few players like that, aren't there, that you tend to, people try to rewrite history on a little bit and say, you shouldn't have got rid of him, when actually they were absolutely useless at the time and obviously needed the move in order to flourish. Lots of players need different things like that. Another player on that pitch, Joel Linton, needed 3 different position moves to find his groove. So football careers are not linear. But good to hear, Jack, that you're still very emotional and... Yeah. And Dougie won't be happy for Newcastle whatsoever, but I think you and I can agree. About time, and good for Newcastle fans. If any fan base literally in the whole country needed that and deserved that, it was them. Dougie, on Isak more specifically, he is most of the way through another excellent season in the Premier League. He gets 19 goals in the league. Obviously, a telling impact in the Cup. Brilliant against Arsenal in the semi-final. Scored in the final. 25 years of age, prime age. No surprise here, is it, that he is just top of the agenda for just about everybody?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's where I was going to start as well. He'll be turning 26 in September, so he is very much in the prime of his career. And what I actually found quite interesting was thinking back to when he signed for Newcastle in August 2022. It was actually, interestingly, a few months after Ugo Ekitike, their initial target, chose to join PSG from Reims rather than Newcastle. And obviously that move didn't work out for him specifically, but now he's at Eintracht Frankfurt and he's absolutely killing it. They've sort of maintained form despite losing Omar Marmoush, who put it together one of the most spectacular half seasons of football we've seen outside of
18 months, probably, actually.
Yeah. But I mean, that first 6 months of this season in particular, like outside of a Bahia for Bayern, we haven't really seen that level of dominance. It was really pretty special. But Isak in his first season, 10 goals in 27 games. Not too bad, but in the last two, 48 goals in 77 games. Absolutely brilliant. 25 goals last year. That was the most by a Newcastle player in a season since Shearer in 2003-04. And Shearer actually only topped that tally 4 times. And he is now, Alexander Isak, that is not Alan Shearer, widely considered the best all-round striker in the Premier League, let's say. But it's worth noting that it hasn't been an easy journey to get to this stage. So he had 1 season in Sweden before joining Dortmund, 1 goal in 13 games. He then gets loaned to the Netherlands. He spends 3 seasons at Real Sociedad. In his final season there, 6 goals in 32 La Liga games. There was a lot of goals in other competitions, but actually didn't arrive at Newcastle with people expecting this level of production so soon necessarily. Although
he was on a hell of a goal drought at one point. It was like he got into double figures for goal drought, and he was playing well, but he wasn't scoring. And people kept casting doubt on him as a player, and I was like, I am watching the games, and he is playing well. It just won't go in.
Absolutely. And I also had played well for Sweden at Euro 2020. I seem to remember a few mazy dribbles, but he'd been used out wide. He'd been used as a 9, but was really this real versatile, dribbly threat in a variety of positions. But he is just a big game player. As we saw on Sunday, this season alone, he's scored against Spurs. He's got 2 versus Chelsea, 2 versus Arsenal, 3 against Forest. He's also scored against Liverpool, Villa, Man United, and of course on Sunday too. And when it really clicked was about late February last year when he came back from a groin injury. So up to that stage, he'd scored 10 in 19 league games in 23-24. Really a respectable tally. But in his final 12 league games of last year, he scored 11, and he's carried that form into this season. And his record this season, 23 goals, 5 assists in 33 games. Absolutely phenomenal. And as you pointed out in your intro, the performances against Saliba and Gabriel, commonly considered, if not the best, one of the best centre-back pairings in the Premier League in the Carabao Cup semi-finals, both legs of that. And then the way he sort of led the line on Sunday as well suggests that this is a guy that could play at a higher level than Newcastle. And that is not disrespecting Newcastle. He just looks absolutely electric right now.
Yeah, he just looks like one of the best strikers in the world. And there's no getting away from that. So when you are that profile of number 9 that can play as a lone striker, you can carry the entire front line on your shoulders, and you can run in behind, you can hold up play, and you can link play. You work as hard as he does. He's the complete physical package. Some of the shots he lets off are like razor sharp. They feel like they're sort of 80, 90 miles an hour right into the top corner. Goalkeepers have got no chance. Some of the stuff he did against Arsenal in the semi-final was just unstoppable. It's absolutely unstoppable. The goal that got disallowed by a margin was absolutely brilliant. He's got it all. And he is now 3 years into a Premier League career. So he's now 3 years Premier League proven. Well, he will be at the end of the season, which is enough to basically remove most doubts. You know, the only bone to pick I've got with Isak is he is a tiny bit injury prone. And there are little periods in seasons where he does, you know, just drop away for a couple of weeks or maybe a month. But that's it. Like, you know, he still regularly puts together 30 games a season minimum. So it's not like he's out for half the season. Sometimes he curbs his own momentum because he just gets a little knock or a niggle, and that's it. That's all I've got in the negative column for Isak. He's just absolutely brilliant, and so that is why the elite clubs have got him on their radar, and that is, of course, why Newcastle are desperate for him to stay. So we're going to discuss the possible landing spots for him over the course of the summer and the options available to him. And I think we have to start, Dougie, just out of respect for Newcastle with the idea that he stays, because there is very obviously a realistic world in which he plays for Newcastle in 2025-26. What do you think are the guiding factors around this?
So, first of all, you've got to credit Newcastle's rise under Eddie Howe, winning that first trophy in 70 years, playing in the Champions League. There are some amazing performances in the Champions League last year as well, which Isak played a key part in. He is absolutely adored by a fan base that probably haven't felt this attachment to a single player since Shearer. I can't really think of anyone off the top of my head.
They like Bruno just as much, I think.
Fair, but he's in the conversation for most loved Newcastle player. And anyone that's been to Sunderland or Newcastle, these are big one club cities, and they get pretty obsessed with their stars. And Newcastle have an even bigger stadium than Sunderland. They make a hell of a lot of noise, and they make a hell of a lot of noise about Isak, and he is absolutely adored there, and rightly so. But there does come in an element of the dreaded net spend and PSR. So Newcastle's net spend in the last 5 years is £354 million. So only 4 sides, Chelsea, Man United, Spurs and Arsenal, have spent more in that period in terms of net spend. And in fact, if you just do it across the last 10 years, which includes 6 complete seasons of Mike Ashley, it's still the 6th most. And that seems bizarre because you're thinking, yes, Isak cost a lot of money. Yes, Bruno Guimaraes cost a lot of money. Joe Linton was a fair chunk as well. Botman too. But there's no massive signings that have arrived. But really, it's been their failure to sell players until last summer when they sold Elliot Anderson for a reported £35 million. Minter, who we talked about last week, £30 million. But those are 2 of the 5 players they've sold in their entire history for over £30 million. The other 3 being Andy Carroll, way back in, 2011?
Something like that, yeah.
Sissoko and Ayoze Perez, which has got to go down as one of the greatest sales of all time to Leicester.
Yeah.
And a Guardian article published in January, which I read yesterday in preparation for this, revealed that their club's latest accounts suggest that they've lost £155 million over the last 3 seasons. Now, anyone's followed anything to do with PSR over the last couple of years, the key number is 105. So they're £50 million over. But what has happened is once you take out the money that they've invested in the women's team, their charity foundation and academy, which are all allowed under PSR stipulations, they get under the line. But they must, I imagine, be fairly close to the line. And Darren Eales, their chief executive, was quoted in the same article saying, if we're going to get where we want to get to, at times it's necessary to trade your players. And he pointed out that it's a counterintuitive part of the PSR system that you need to trade players to reinvest. And we've talked about this throughout the season on this podcast. We talked about it with Villa. We've talked about it with a number of other clubs. And basically what Newcastle are looking to do over the next few years is to improve or increase the size, I should say, of St James's Park, because Spurs' turnover at the moment is £440 million. And a lot of that is coming from that amazing stadium they've got. Newcastle's is £250 million. But that obviously is a couple of years down the line that you'd have to redevelop the stadium. It might not be enough really for this summer or the summer to come, etc. So you're looking at Newcastle's squad and you're thinking, who are the sellable assets if they did have to sell a player? And I think their 4 most valuable players are Bruno Guimaraes, Isak, Gordon, and Sven Botman. The issue with selling Isak, which is why they might choose to sell someone else, is that Callum Wilson's now 33 and he's missed 29 games with injury this season and 28 last year. And I would suggest if I was Newcastle's transfer committee that they look to replace Wilson this summer, let alone Isak and Wilson. So for me, who is more replaceable, and I'm interested in your take on this, Sam, who is more replaceable between Bruno Guimaraes and Isak? And as much as I love Bruno Guimaraes, I actually think he's more replaceable than Isak.
Oh, the answer here is always the striker is the hardest to replace. I think it's a pretty standard rule across football, and you don't need to get into the weeds and overcomplicate it. The number 9s are tough to find. They're expensive. And if you sell one, you're then presented with the task of going and finding another one. And you have to do it against the backdrop of everybody knowing you have a ton of money at your disposal. So it makes it even harder. So without a shadow of a doubt, as amazing as Bruno is, and this is a guy who could play for just about anyone in the world, it's still easier to replace him either with one player or, as Jack likes to say, in the aggregate with a couple, with a formation change, whatever it might be. Still easier. It's still easier to do. And also, just hanging over this whole situation is the Daily Mail reporting today that Newcastle chairman Yasser Al-Rumayyan has told the club's hierarchy to resist any offers for his favourite player, Alex Isak. Now, that is a man I would not disobey. No. He also, Al-Rumayyan may not be privy to the PSR conversations that are happening, or maybe what the club may have to do, may feel forced to do financially, but he doesn't want Isak to be sold. So that is a feather in Eddie Howe's cap there, because he won't like that either. Dougie, do you think winning this cup would have gone any way to sort of convincing Isak that Newcastle's the right place to be for him?
Probably not. And I don't really mean that as a disrespect to Newcastle's achievement in winning that cup. Look, the big trophies, the Champions Leagues, the Premier Leagues are hoovered up by the top sides in Europe every year. The Carabao Cup or the FA Cup is really what clubs like Newcastle and clubs outside of that traditional Big Six are aiming for. So they've achieved a key goal. But Alexander Isak, having played for Dortmund, having played in huge stadiums in La Liga, having had 6, well, maybe even closer to 12 months of speculation around the fact he might leave and the fact that he's been linked with Arsenal's and Liverpool's and clubs further afield, Barcelona, for example, I don't think you're persuaded to stay by a Carabao Cup, I'm afraid.
I think there's one other thing to consider here, and we talked about it actually on Tuesday's episode of Ranks. We were talking about what's next for Newcastle, whether this is kind of a launch pad, whether it's something they can kind of jump off and springboard off to other trophies. And what the Carabao Cup does, as much as anything else, it guarantees European football next season. Because obviously last year, Newcastle was stung by this, right? A cup win, taking them out of the European conversation in that Manchester United ended up playing in Europe, even though Newcastle finished above them. But last year, obviously, Newcastle had to balance that kind of double-edged sword of playing in the Champions League again and then trying to compete after finishing in the top 4 the year before. And they struggled with it in a similar way to, Aston Villa struggling with it a little bit this season, right? And you kind of look at it, it's really tough. And you kind of look at it and where Newcastle are, that first team is so strong, but the drop off from it is just not there, right? The depth isn't there to be able to rotate in the same kind of way. And so when you kind of put that into the conversation, you see what happened. They got knocked out in the League Cup last year by Chelsea on penalties. They lost to Manchester City in the quarterfinals of the FA Cup. Neither are, dreadful ways of turning things over, right? Those two things are kind of shrugged, fair enough. But I think that if Newcastle want to bounce onwards, the conversation is, okay, you've won your first trophy now. What do you want to do next year? Compete in potentially the Champions League, but at the very least, in Europe, and also be still in contention for a Champions League spot and be in contention to go and win another trophy. That's the next step, right? It's one thing winning a trophy. It's another thing being able to use that as a launch pad. And I think that where we're at is that we know that Newcastle's depth isn't there right now. And so your point, Dougie, about the fact that if they're on the edge still with PSR, now I don't know where the reset button hits and where the money, came in terms of the 3 years. I think there is going to be a little bit more leeway this summer, but not loads. And if they are going to build a squad that's going to be able to compete on multiple fronts, you do at some point have to prioritize a level of depth. Now, I'm sure that everyone at Newcastle is like, that doesn't mean we're going to sell Alex Isak because how on earth are we going to replace him? But it is worth considering that actually the next step for Newcastle is making that leap to being able to compete on multiple fronts.
And almost the only way that a club like Newcastle can do this is to sell someone for a huge amount of money.
Hello, Rag Squad. When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Allo or Allbirds or Aviator Nation, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand and brilliant marketing, but an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the businesses, making selling and for shoppers buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify, who are home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And the not so secret with Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning that there are way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going. So, if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling, on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. It's no secret, businesses that want to grow with Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/ranks, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/ranks to upgrade your selling today. That's shopify.com/ranks.
There are some things in life that just shouldn't be forgotten, like bringing your keys when you leave the house, setting your fantasy lineup, and most importantly, having Hidden Valley Ranch to watch the game. Especially if wings are on the menu. Those creamy, zesty, Cool Ranch flavors take each spicy, savory bite to an unforgettable level. Hidden Valley Ranch, only serious about flavor.
Calling all daydreamers and date nighters. Come immerse yourself in the rich culture of Texas and dig into our mouth-watering barbecue. Trailblazers can explore our natural wonders. And beach lovers will wonder why they've never felt so relaxed before. You're invited to discover experiences you can only find in Texas. Visit TravelTexas.com and plan your trip today. Let's Texas.
Did you know 39% of teen drivers admit to texting while driving? Even scarier, those who text are more likely to speed and run red lights. Shockingly, 94% know it's dangerous but do it anyway. As a parent, you can't always be in the car, but you can stay connected to their safety with Greenlight Infinity's driving reports. Monitor their driving habits, see if they're using their phone, speeding, and more. These reports provide real data for meaningful conversations about safety. Plus, with weekly updates, you can track their progress over time. Help keep your teens safe. Sign up for Greenlight Infinity at greenlight.com/podcast.
Which does bring us on to the other options on the market, which is basically we're putting ourselves in a scenario here where we say Newcastle have reluctantly agreed that they're going to have to sell him, either in the name of PSR or in the name of building a appropriate squad to manage on multiple fronts next season and the season beyond that, because as we know, it's tough. Newcastle have experienced it. Villa experienced it this season. You know what? Forest are going to have it next season. It's going to be it stretches you to the max. And sometimes you have to sacrifice a really, really, really good player in order to buy three others that aren't as good, but fills out the squad. So let's say, for argument's sake, that Newcastle don't make the Champions League, and unfortunately, they're going to have to make this difficult decision. The Premier League clubs that will come calling, Dougie, who are they and who is the best fit?
I think there's two that will come calling.
I think there's
most
three, for what it's worth.
Okay. Well, let's hear the third in just a second. Well, actually, okay. I think it was Arsenal and Liverpool are the top two options, but I'm intrigued by the third. Who's the third?
Well, it's Chelsea, isn't it? Because there's the transfers; they'll be involved.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, they are addicted to getting the wallet out. So yeah, Chelsea will probably enter the discussion as well. Whether they should is another.
You can't say they don't need a 9. So
no, they do need a 9. I don't know. I wouldn't totally rule out Nicholas Jackson just yet, and I think they probably need.
They need more.
They need other things more than they need a 9. Well. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Anyway, go on. Let's talk about Liverpool and Arsenal.
I think we're due another truth on them, to be totally honest. Anyway, let's talk about Arsenal. So Arsenal are 12 points behind Liverpool. Obviously, there's 9 games to go. They've scored 16 fewer goals than Liverpool. And actually, if you look in their underlying metrics as well, Arsenal rank 7th for shots this season. That's below Palace. They rank 8th for shots on target this season. That's below Brentford. They rank 4th for total XG created, below Liverpool, Bournemouth and Chelsea. Their attack hasn't been particularly impressive. And yes, there's a number of factors involved in that. Please don't tweet me really aggressively right now. But clearly they are short of elite top level number 9 talent. And Alexander,
Dougie, even before the entire forward line got wiped out by injury, we were still having the conversation there and then about whether Arsenal should add a 9. Jesus and Havertz and the wingers all dropping out at the same time has only sharpened the knives in some respects. But the conversation was still there. So I don't think it's revisionist to say anything other than Arsenal should and have been in the conversation for Isak.
Absolutely. Liverpool, so I just read out all those metrics. They are top of all those metrics. But what would encourage Salah, Trent? I mean, the whispers at the moment is that Van Dijk is potentially going to leave and seems more likely than the other two to leave right now, which I'm very surprised about personally. But what would encourage any of those players to stay more than a successful move for Isak? I think it could be absolutely crucial. He consistently gives them issues. He scored 4 and assisted 1 against them in 6 games. His performance in the 3-3 draw at St James's Park, actually, I thought was even more impressive than the Carabao Cup final. 5 dribbles on the night, 5 chances created, 2 shots, 1 goal, 1 assist. And that was the springboard to then go on that crazy run where he scored 11 in his next 9. And you look at, everyone will say, oh, but Arsenal need a number 9. They need that forward. Liverpool arguably do too.
So do they, man. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, Darwin Nunez's future looks really, really uncertain. He's only played 966 minutes in the Premier League this season. He scored 6 goals in the league and Champions League. Diogo Jota's form, and I know he's had a number of issues over the last few seasons, but it's not been great. He hasn't scored in his last 10 appearances. He completed 7 of 22 passes against Newcastle in the final and then got hooked. Arsenal, also, there is this element of needing to spend elsewhere. And you can say that with Liverpool as well. Maybe they need a left back. Maybe, well, they probably need to replace Trent as well. Even if they're going to bring in a backup and it's going to be Bradley as their number 1, they needed a right back. Maybe they need to think about their centre-back options going forward. But Arsenal definitely need to spend elsewhere as well. There's talk about Zubimendi coming in. I think they probably need another passing number 8 in there as well.
Creativity outside of Odegaard should be on the agenda.
They were linked with Kimmich heavily. I'd probably go out and sign someone like Angelo Stieler, who I think is kind of like the left-footed Kimmich. I think he's absolutely amazing. They also need a winger/utility forward that can maybe take minutes off Martinelli, maybe rotate with Odegaard. So what I'm trying to say is there is a variety of positions that Arsenal need to strengthen. Their defence is pretty set and their goalkeepers are set, even though I think Neto's out of contract. So they need a backup goalkeeper too. But my point is, can you find potentially 3 starters in this 11 and sign Alexander Isak in the same summer? I'm not so sure. So for me, the best Premier League option, and where I'd go if I was Alexander Isak as well, is Liverpool.
But doesn't the same argument apply to Liverpool? They're on the cusp of losing 3 absolutely huge players for nothing in return. And so both of these clubs have got issues to solve. And Isak would be one of the issues, but both of them have other things to address as well.
I think Liverpool have less expensive players to sign, if that makes sense. Look, a Van Dijk replacement would be seriously expensive, but a backup right back, not as expensive. Their midfield is actually pretty deep, although Slot doesn't seem to rate Endo and hasn't really given very many minutes to Harvey Elliott. So you just don't know with Arne Slot because he hasn't really had a window yet. And the way he's not rotated his squad this year that effectively suggests that he doesn't really rate his squad bar the sort of top 14, 15 players.
Yeah, I don't understand where to go with this. I don't know if I should be criticising Arne Slot for not rotating heavily enough, or if it's just, they're just not good enough. I don't think it's fair to say that like Harvey Elliott is just not good enough to play a bigger role in this team, because I think he clearly is. Did Slot just underestimate how intense every fixture in the Premier League is compared to the Eredivisie, and just not really understand that he needed to rotate these players a bit more because they've got to March and they flagged? And even the Southampton game, why did 8 of them start? I mean, it's the worst team in the league at home. It's the dream fixture. Just put everybody out.
He did it throughout the Champions League as well. The only game he rotated for was PSV at the very end, and it was clear that they wanted a top 2 slot. And unfortunately for him, pardon the pun on the slot, but unfortunately for him, getting that top spot ended up with PSG in the last 16. He didn't know that, of course, but actually winning the Champions League didn't actually give Liverpool. Winning the Champions League group stage didn't give Liverpool the sort of tangible benefits that they were probably expecting.
No, true. But I just think both of these teams have got a lot to sort out. That said, I don't think it rules either of them out at all. Chelsea, I was only half joking because, it's a transfer, and it's a very, very good player, so they'll be interested. They'll stick their nose in for sure. What's clear, if either of these 2 clubs were to sign Alexander Isak, is that a hell of a lot of money would need to change hands here. A hell of a lot. I'm intrigued to see where you would sort of theoretically price this deal, because Arsenal supposedly are happy to break their transfer record to sign Isak. Now, a quick reminder, their transfer record is no longer Nicola Pepe, thank God. It's Declan Rice for 100 million rising to 105. I mean, so that's your absolute baseline. So where are we going here? What are we looking at?
It's a lot. I mean, this is a club that don't have, we mentioned 4 stars they could sell, but not anyone aside from Bruno and Gordon and Isak, that would fetch a huge fee. And this is their golden goose. Like, why wouldn't you ask for a Premier League record fee of 130 million, 140 million pounds? I just don't know why it would be in their benefit to not extract as much potential cash from their player that has come off not just one, but two excellent seasons, that has done it in the Champions League before, played for big clubs in the past. He feels like a very surefire bet to be a success at his next club, aside from the injury issues, which you already mentioned. I think this could be probably the third most expensive signing of all time. I think it could get to sort of above Coutinho levels. I don't know why it wouldn't.
Yeah, I was looking at the list of the most expensive footballers of all time. It's a horrible list for anyone that wants to go and look at it. Like, it's full of errors, full of mistakes. Players that move for this much money don't tend to do very well. It paints Declan Rice in a wonderful light. I mean, even though he's been very good for Arsenal, but they've not hit the heights yet that you intend to hit when you spend 100 million on a player. He's been probably 8 out of 10 for Arsenal, and that's like extremely rare. Like, this list is just horrific. It's full of Coutinho's and the initial Ousmane Dembele and Griezmann, and got a cold shiver just thinking about it. But Coutinho there in third was probably where I would be thinking too. We're not going to get to Mbappe in second, 180 million, and I hope to God we never get a transfer like Neymar's. But yeah, I mean, Isak could legitimately be the third most expensive player of all time if he were to move this summer. And Dougie, you say, well, look, you know, and I agree with you, Bruno's easier to replace, and why would Newcastle sell? Well, 135 million does a lot of talking at the end of the day. You know, you got third most expensive sale in the history of the game. It means a lot. Speaking of finances, I assume, Dougie, that if Newcastle were to try and sell him to a club outside the Premier League, which is a tactic that clubs often use, you know, out of sight, out of mind, can't hurt us, la 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 la, fingers in the ear, that sort of thing. The cut here is that if Premier League clubs do that these days, they have to accept less money. That said, I'm looking across Europe. I'm taking into account the respective finances. I'm looking at the fact that Barca have got Lewandowski on a whopper of a contract. Madrid have recently invested in Mbappe. Bayern have recently bought Harry Kane. Atletico recently bought Julian Alvarez. Inter look pretty set. I'm running out of clubs here, mate. But I've got a feeling you've got something up your sleeve for me. Is there anyone on the continent, anyone at all, that can enter this conversation realistically?
No. I mean, yes.
I was hoping you had something.
I do have something, but it's not particularly realistic, but I do have something. Okay. I mean, Bayern if Bayern didn't have Kane, he'd be amazing there. If Barcelona had any money, he'd be amazing there. But I think actually a long shot that is more realistic than most is Real Madrid. And you've got to hear me out. You've got to hear me out on this. So there are a lot of reports claiming that Saudi Arabian sides are preparing to offer Real Madrid a monstrous amount of money to sign Vinicius Jr. Vinicius Jr. himself is supposedly going to be offered an unprecedented £1 billion contract. Now, this is not coming from sources that I would say are super reliable just yet. It's not the freshest, you know, it's not a David Ornstein bomber just yet. But apparently, from the reports that I've seen, from the places that I have seen, that Vinicius Jr. has a few stipulations and he's basically got the option of extending his contract with Real Madrid, which he wants to do. I think by all accounts, he is in a fantastic position to do so. He nearly won the Ballon d'Or last year. He's had an okay season this year. There's been some injury issues. He's tried to blend with Mbappe rather than Bellingham, and it's not always necessarily been that smooth. But Mbappe has paid more than him. Mbappe's paid 20 million euros per year. He's paying 15, and apparently he wants to be put level with Mbappe. Now, if I was Real Madrid, I'd just absolutely do that.
Yeah, that's fair.
But if he was to move to Saudi, supposedly he's looking for a 2 to 3 year contract rather than the standard 4-5 that they offer most of their stars when they go to Saudi Arabia. Earn a just unprecedentedly massive amount of money and get back in a couple of years' time. Now, if he were to leave, and all these things I think are pretty unlikely, then signing a striker rather than a left winger, I think would be the better option for Real. And we talked about this in the Mbappe podcast around sort of January time. Because Mbappe's best games So his hat-trick versus Man City came in a 4-4-2. His hat-trick versus Real Valladolid, Vinny Jr. was injured. His brace versus Las Palmas, Vinny Jr. was injured. His goal and assist versus Sevilla, Vinny Jr. was injured. You're seeing the theme that he's either working best outside of a 4-3-3, where he is what he's used to call the pivot when he was at Liga, and he didn't like being part of the pivot then, or it's coming with Vinicius Jr. out of the side and he's pulling into that left-hand channel or starting in that left-hand channel and wreaking absolute havoc. And the options provided by having Alexander Isak and Kylian Mbappe in the same team are just frightening. And it's something I'd love to see. So I actually think if he was to go outside of the Premier League, you'd need Vinicius Jr. to leave Real Madrid for sure, because that's just another ego to throw in there, even though it will be a tenth of the size of Vinicius Jr. and Mbappe's. But you just don't need him aside from this scenario where Vinicius Jr. leaves. But Sam, if you were Vinicius Jr., it's difficult to comprehend the amount of money that would be offered to you, but he's in such a good position at Real Madrid, surely.
Well, I did not expect this podcast to take this turn. Me in the mind's eye of Vinicius Jr. debating £1 billion contract to Saudi. I'd probably decline it. I earn more as a freelance journalist, but
the amount of places you work, you probably do.
Oh, good grief. Not at all. That is a bit of a crackpot theory, Dougie. But I guess it does take something a little bit out of the box to imagine a scenario where Isak does actually leave the Premier League, because, as I said, so many of the elite clubs are stocked and the finances just become so overwhelmingly difficult for those outside the league. It really does narrow Isak's options. And that, of course, strengthens Newcastle's hand. You know, those two things work hand in hand. I think we can more or less wrap it up here, but I just want to step back into reality just briefly to wrap things up. And I would like one-word answers from both of you, please. Jack, microphone at the ready as well. First of all, if Newcastle make the Champions League, will they sell Isak? Dougie?
No.
Jack? I agree.
No.
So what we're banking on here, we banking on it? We don't actually care, do we? What we're relying on here for an Isak summer is for Newcastle to finish outside of the top 5. If Newcastle do so, they fail to make the Champions League and they end up selling him, where does he go? Dougie?
Oh, Liverpool, I think.
Jack?
I would probably say Arsenal. I feel like they have been more of they've had that spending power, and I know Liverpool have kind of resisted and therefore potentially have more in the bank, but I feel like Arsenal needs something and the fan base needs
this
something.
Is a long word.
One of the ones you didn't mention. I know. But you did mention Barcelona. If the Barcelona financial situation sorts itself out as the long-term Lewandowski replacement, like I think it's probably more likely to be Jonathan David, but for what it's worth, it's just worth thinking on that. About, I think.
Monster last year of his deal, I think, isn't he? The 2026 year is like, I mean, they're the masters of kicking the can down the road, and his wage this year next season is going to be horrendous. All right, finally, actually, I'm giving my answer.
Go for it.
Also Arsenal. I think
Nice.
It's been too long in the making.
Okay, can I throw 4 names that could potentially replace him, which I thought about?
Yes.
They're all pretty different. You ready for these?
I am.
Patrick Schick.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Mateus Cunha.
Oh.
Jean-Philippe Mateta. And a wild card of Jonathan Burkhardt. But I do like Patrick Schick replacing Alexander Isak. Never really loved at Leverkusen by Xabi Alonso. Doesn't play in the biggest games. Patrick Schick, very different, but I mean, Cunha as well. They'd have a lot of cash. And then Jean-Philippe Mateta. Crystal Palace fans won't thank me for suggesting Mateta, but what a season this guy is having.
Well, look, Mateta's already being linked to Man United every other week. So I think like the conversation is unfortunately already there, and Palace fans are already having to deal with it. And this is the nature of supporting a club like that in the Premier League, is that you've got a good player, and if another opening becomes available, you start worrying because you think it's gonna be your guy who gets hunted to fill it. So yeah, right. Finally, one word answer, more or less. Oh, it's a 1-figure answer. If Isak leaves Newcastle this summer, Dougie, what will his transfer fee be in pounds?
I think realistically, 110 20.
Jack?
130.
I got 131. So if it's any higher, I get closer.
You can be one penny
they call
over.
me the
but not-
tactics writer. Look at that, coming true to form. All right, well, look, for the record, Newcastle fans, I hope he doesn't leave because he's a credit to you. And even though it directly goes against my own team's prospects of enjoying success, it's great when a team outside of the traditional top six, big six, whatever you want to call it, really pushes the boat out and really threatens the hierarchy, starts winning trophies and starts ruffling feathers. And, we've only just got bored of it from Spurs, but for 10 years or so, it was a very welcome disruption to the established order. And clubs like Newcastle, that fighting against financial regulation in order to make that happen, it's tough. And if you can manage it, fantastic. With Isak, it's a lot easier than it would be without him. Dougie, I'm sure you're just desperate for him to leave.
I wouldn't mind to see him leave, but I do. You've got to respect Newcastle for spotting him, developing him for 3 years. And to be honest, that level of talent to have at your club for 3 years, you'll always remember it.
You will indeed. Right. That's it from us. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for listening. Dougie, a pleasure as always.
Thank you, Sam.
And Jack, thank you for watching over us. For those of you who
Sam,
don't know,
Jack,
Jack's not doing so well today. He texted us today saying he wasn't feeling great. So he's really battled through this one, probably spoken a little bit more than he's expected. But his workmanlike and soldier-like commitment to the cause is always appreciated, as is your listenership. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Hello, Rag Squad. When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Aloe or Allbirds or Aviator Nation, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand and brilliant marketing, but an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the businesses, making selling and for shoppers, buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify, who are home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And the not-so-secret secret with Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning that there are way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going. So, if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling, on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. It's no secret, businesses that want to grow with Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/ranks, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/ranks to upgrade your selling today. That's shopify.com/ranks.
There are some things in life that just shouldn't be forgotten, like bringing your keys when you leave the house, setting your fantasy lineup, and most importantly, having Hidden Valley Ranch to watch the game. Especially if you're having pizza. Those creamy, zesty, Cool Ranch flavors take each cheesy, melty bite to an unforgettable level. Hidden Valley Ranch. Only serious about flavor.
Calling all fun lovers and memory makers, Texas invites you to cheer from our stadiums and dance like no one is watching. Culture seekers can find the art that truly inspires. And from our shopping hubs to our chic boutiques, fashionistas will never leave empty-handed. Texas is an unforgettable experience that's waiting just for you. Visit TravelTexas.com and plan your trip today. Let's Texas.
Did you know 39% of teen drivers admit to texting while driving? Even scarier, those who text are more likely to speed and run red lights. Shockingly, 94% know it's dangerous but do it anyway. As a parent, you can't always be in the car, but you can stay connected to their safety with Greenlight Infinity's driving reports. Monitor their driving habits, see if they're using their phone, speeding, and more. These reports provide real data for meaningful conversations about safety. Plus, with weekly updates, you can track their progress over time. Help keep your teens safe. Sign up for Greenlight Infinity at greenlight.com/podcast.